Welcome back to ARC Tutorials. This is Angular 19 complete CRUD project with latest features like signals, form builders, validations, standalone components, routing, breakpoint observer, defer, and much more. So far, we have built this application, which is an expense tracker with a layout using Angular material, and we set up the routes. We built the grid, which is using Angular material table. We have this data that is dynamically coming from HTTP service using signals. Make sure that you go through all of the previous tutorials in order to implement this. Again, you have the items per page that you can select. You have the next and previous pagination here, and looks good. Today we are going to work on add and edit component. The form will be same. We'll be using the same form for both add and edit. We'll be using the dynamic form builder. Let's get started. Before we get started, make sure that you get the full stack interview series book that I have launched, which will help you prepare for your interviews and in general learning. It has over 25 technologies covered and more than 2000 interview question and answers with code snippets. Thank you in advance. Like I said, we are covering all the latest features of Angular 19 as part of this project. So this is a hands-on learning experience for you while building a project. So far I did a demo. We did the installation and setup, signals and services, routing and standalone components, CRUD operation. We implemented Angular material table with read functionality. Today we are going to use form builders to use the add and edit functionality. We'll build the dynamic form, we'll do validations and much more. Let's get started. Alright, so now if you remember, we generated few components earlier. One was this expense add edit component. It has nothing, but right now if you go here, it just shows the message expense add edit works, which is coming from the template. Okay, that is the .html. So we are going to work on it, use the form builder. Let's get started. In the component.ts, first we'll import the form builder because that's the most important thing to build forms. So we are going to use form builder and import it. The other things that we will also need is mat button, because obviously we'll have to add a button to submit. We will also need input module because we are going to work with different types of inputs, like say select drop down and select module. For that we'll also need mat date picker module. Now date picker module, there are so many things, so yeah, date picker module. And we'll also need mat card because we want to make it look beautiful. And we will also import mat icon. We'll add some icons to it, making it look good. Mat form field, also we will import form field module. And I think for now those are all the things we can think of for the form. So let's do that, and that should all be it. So it says mat form builder. Oh, sorry, you don't need that here because we are going to use mat form builder, form group, form array. Do we need? I am not sure, we'll see. But form, or rather validators. Okay, and of course we will need reactive forms module, that we need it here. Okay, that's all the imports that we need at this point. We'll add as we need them. Okay, I'll start with the component.ts file first. And here first let's do the expense service, because we know that how to inject now. Instead of constructor, we are using inject method to directly inject the dependency injection. So this is how we will use now. Instead of constructor creating, we'll directly inject it. So we'll need a router, so I'm going to inject router 2. All right, and we will need a snack bar. I like that messaging part. It's a little thing that comes up, and not this dot snack bar, we just need a snack bar module. So oh, it's a snack bar that we have imported, and we will also get a route, the current route, because we need to capture which route user is in. So we are going to use activated route. That way we'll know whether what is the route, so that we can extract the ID of the route that user is trying to work on. I'm going to have an array of categories. This is nothing but, again, I'm putting a static list, but you can add or make a API and get that data. This is to track the movies, and I know that you guys are dating, so I'm adding a dating category. Let me know if you're dating. Good luck with that. All right, now we'll have an expense form which is of type form group. So now it will say that it doesn't have any initializer. Now we are going to just put it undefined for now. And next is edit mode. Will make it false, that no, by default it's not an edit, by default it will be an add. Expense ID, if it's an edit mode, we will have a expense ID number, right? And by default it can be null, or okay, by default it's null because it's not a edit mode, so it's false by default and it's null. I'm going to define a constructor, and I'm going to inject the form builder. I'm going to have, for now I think this is good, so let's build the form. We are going to use this dot fb, that is not um, Facebook, it's expense. So expense form is equal to this dot fb, and we are going to build that form now using, I'll do a group, and what we'll do is this group is a method. um, so inside this we can define all the fields that we want to capture. Right, now let's start with title, and we are saying that let's keep an array. Initial value will be empty. Since we injected validators, I'm saying it's a required field. Then we have the category. Again, I'm keeping it empty. Validators dot required, right? And then we'll take amount. It will be null because it's a number. It's empty value. So we can add multiple checks to this one. So again, array bracket and validators dot required, comma, validators dot. Here we'll add that minimum should be 0, and we have also I think created ID, which is there, but it will be dynamically generated. So we'll have a date, keep it empty, and validators dot required. You can add any other fields. If you want the form to be bigger, you can add different types that you want to add. Alright, so just a basic form we have. We have the title, we have the amount, we have the category and date. The next we'll do is we'll check and write a subscription inside the category. Okay, why? Because we need to check if the user is coming as a edit mode. That means if he's trying to edit, then we are going to capture that particular ID through URL. So for that we'll also need to add a route for edit. So this is a subscription for this, and inside this we can get the ID of the expense that user is trying to edit. Dot get, and here we'll mention ID. So what this will give is, if there is an ID in the URL, it will provide it. Now if ID is present, write that condition and say this dot is edit mode equal to true, because of course user is trying to edit. This dot expense ID will be the ID that we got it from the route. So this would be a string, so we'll convert it into an integer by adding plus sign. Alright, and then what we'll do, this dot expense service dot, now if you see we are getting the expenses, right? So what I'll do, dot get expenses, so this will return all the expenses, and then we are going to fire it in effect, which will say, in this effect what we will do is we will get the one that we are looking for. So you have the expenses, you are saying this dot expense service dot expenses. Now once this will get you the latest data from the signal. If expense dot length is greater than 0, because if you have expenses that were returned you would edit them. Then I'm saying this dot will need a form to load, so I'm going to say load expense data, okay, and we'll pass this particular ID, which is this dot expense ID. That means filter it from the list of signal data that we received. That's what this is meaning. So now let's go ahead, implement this function, and here I'm going to add and say it's going to take an expense ID which is number. And now the next step we'll do is implement this, and what is it saying? It says number is null is not assignable to parameter of type number. Okay, so here we have it as a number. It says null is not a type. Okay, 0, it's a number. So alright, then what we'll do, we'll first fetch data from this dot express service dot get expense by ID, and it will be the one that we just passed. So this will get the data from the one that we are looking at. So I'm just going to leave it at console log right now. Okay, and let's go ahead and work on the form first and then come back here. So I'm going to use mat card again, because to make it look good, and why not. Alright, so in the template we'll starting again, we'll use the same format that we used earlier. We'll use a header, we'll use a mat card title, and we'll say add or expense, add or edit expense, and here we'll write mat card content. Okay, so now in the mat card content we will define our form. So I'm going to say form, and this will be a form group, which is what we have already defined, which is form group. Or what is the name of the form that we have given? Let's check. The name of the form is this dot expense form. So in the HTML you'll write expense form, and then we'll write ng submit. That means what should happen on submit. So I'm going to write on submit method and close this. It will give error because it will say that on submit is not found. So let's go ahead and type that and do a console.log and say form submitted without any data for now, step by step. Now that we have the form, let's throw in the form field. So I'm going to use div and say form group. So we have a div which is form group. Inside this I'm going to use form row. Let's add one row at a time, and I'm going to use mat form field, which is nothing but adding a form field to that. And inside this we can define mat label, which is the label for it. So we can say enter title, right? Label, basically the that will go with it. Then we are going to define a mat input type, and we'll use the form control name, which is what will be used to bind from our form group expense form that we have added. You can add a placeholder and say enter title and close this input. Alright, there are errors. Let's check what are the errors. It says form group any undefined is not assignable, and this is not getting assigned. It says it's not assigned. Let's check what could be the problem. So we have the form group. We are binding it with expense form, and that expense form is here. Expense form is here, and it is of type form group. So if we remove it, that should be fine and should be initialized. Alright, so now we see we get one form field. I click on it, it is giving error because we mentioned it as validators dot required, right? So this is good, but we can make it better. So what we are going to do is add one more small hint for mat error, and let's add that mat error. So what this will do is every time there is a error, it will display it. Okay, so for that we'll write the condition when it should be displayed. It should be displayed when my expense form dot get title right, if it is there and has error. That's an inbuilt one. And what is the type of error we are looking for? It's required. Then you display that enter title for expense. Now let's save it. It is giving error to us. Let's check. At the rate comp. Um okay, so ng if directive was used in the template, but it's not provided. It's not in the common module. So let's check that whether common module was provided to this component. I don't think so. So let's add that common module and import it from Angular common. Now let's see the error. It's gone. So add an expense. So now we are seeing the little validation. If I enter something, it goes away. Looks good. Alright, now let's go ahead, add other form fields too. If you are someone who is experienced, what I would do usually is copy this entire form as it is. You don't have to type every time. So change the thing and say category. Now you can do other forms also that we want to add. So let's go ahead and do that. So for the amount, let's say enter amount. It will be an input, and form control name now will be amount. Placeholder will be enter amount, and here we will say if it has a error required, right, then show this message. And let's say there is one more validation we have added for this, which is for min title entered amount should be positive number, enter value for amount. Alright, now let's see. I click on it, it says enter value for amount, and I'm going to enter -10 and enter. It should not take it because minimum. So see, that's the problem. It's not mat input, it's min. That means if it has the error which is min. So it says entered amount should be positive number. If I enter 100, it's fine. I enter title, the form looks good. Alright, so we have the validations that are coming in. Now, same way now, but for the category, it will be a select drop down. So let me show you that how it's done. It will be little different than what we will do with input. Okay, so input I'm deleting. Instead, we are going to use mat select. That's the for the drop down. And here you will mention the form control name, and the name that we have given is category. And in this we'll provide option, that is and we are going to use ng4, and I'll show you a very important error message that you would see so that you can learn by seeing it. Alright, and then I'm going to bind that value and say value is equal to category, so that way that option is displayed in it. So in this we can just write with interpolation category. I'm going to close this so you can read better. Right, let category of categories, that means this is nothing but the array that we defined here, which has the categories, and we are looping through them using ng4 and binding that value and displaying that value as a drop down. Let's go ahead. Now you can see the select drop down values are visible. Let's change that title and those details. Control name category. Now for the select, it's going to be little different. Okay, since we have said it's only required, you don't need two error messages. Expense form dot category dot has error required, then say that select a category. Perfect. So now it says select a category. You select one, that error is gone, and you enter some title, you enter some amount, looks good. Now same way, copy this form row again and say that select date. So form control name will now be date, but it will not be a select drop down, right? Because it's a date. So for that we'll need the date picker. So delete this mat select. Instead we are going to have a input, say mat input, and we are saying mat date picker. Now we are saying that it's a date picker, and date picker, and then the form control name is equal to date. If you want, you can do some placeholder, or if not, just close it for now. And then we have to define the mat date picker, because we gave here picker, right? You see that, this one, this name. So we need to attach that date picker to this. Okay, and here we are going to change it to date, and it has some error. Let's check what is the error. It says can't bind mat date picker since it's an unknown property of input. So let's check if the module is imported. Date picker module is there, input module is there. What are we missing? We are definitely missing something. So mat date picker, let's check it in our component and see if all the modules are correctly acquired here. That's the only thing that when you see these errors, these are pretty common, straightforward. All you need to do is make sure that you have all the correct things imported. So we got the mat form builder, button, input, snack bar, select, date picker, icon, forms module. Date picker is there. Did we define here? Date picker we have not created, but we did add it, and it should be ideally available, but we don't have it. So what we'll do, let's check again one more time and see if there is anything from the date picker that we missed out. We have the date picker module, date picker, mat date picker module we have. Okay, let's go back to our template and see if we missed something adding there. So you will run into these issues no matter how many years of work we put in. It's always some or other thing that will cause a picking you, but that's all right. So let's go ahead and now check mat date picker. We have, okay, we are missing mat date picker toggle, mat date picker toggle. Mat, that means we are telling where to attach that. Okay, and we are telling it for it's going to be a picker. That's the one that we added here, and we have the mat date picker. Is the spelling correct? That's the problem. That's the problem. That's the problem. Capital P. Okay. Alright, so go to add an expense and it is throwing error, but I don't see an error here. Let's check what is the error. No provider found for date adapter. You must add one of the following. So see, this is another thing I wanted to tell you, that whenever you see such errors, you have to go to your main.ts. You can go here, go to app config. In the providers, you need to make it available by adding provide native date adapter from core and save it, and now you should be able to resolve that error. So now we have the date picker as well. Alright, so our form is almost complete. Let's go ahead, add the submit button and then submit this. If you are new, if you are trying to practice, do not run on my pace. Like I said, I have been doing this for many years now, and it's not fair on your part to expect that you would match my speed right away. So you will get there, but not right away. Okay. Now in the mat card actions, after mat card content, here I'm going to add a submit button. We have already imported the button module, and I'm going to say mat raised button, and we are going to say, let's say color is primary. Okay. And um, and on click, what we'll do, we'll submit it. So on submit, we'll submit, and we can say that whether it is disabled or not and all that we can do, but let me just close it here for now and say submit. Okay, so all we have done is under the mat card actions, we are adding a submit button like this. So once you do click on that submit, your form will be submitted. Okay, let's add one more condition to it so that you learn how things are done in proper way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a condition which will check whether it is disabled or not. So I'll say disabled equal to expense form dot whether it is, if it is invalid, make it disabled. Right now it's disabled because the expense form is not correct, right? Okay. So let's enter and then implement the submit button. So we have a just dummy on submit that we have added, which is just doing a console log. So what I will do is this dot expense form dot value. So let's go ahead, type something, our tutorials, category food, select a date, and then open the inspect, and we can see and hit submit. So form submitted, and it is submitting with the values. Alright, so we have the add feature done. Now all it pending is to make a patch with the backend, okay, which is we have to save it. So let's go ahead and save it. This is getting little bigger. If it's confusing, I'm sorry, but we have to do this. Alright, so here if this dot expense form dot valid, if it is valid, then only proceed to make a API call. Then what you'll do, you'll take that value, okay, which is of type expense equal to, and use the spread operator so that we can get the this dot expense form dot value and patch it. Value comma id this dot expense id. Okay, so now this is not giving that. Okay, so what we will need to do is we are going to build that again. Okay, oh sorry, it's not a, it's an object. Okay, So this is how the ID will be. Now we can pass some more values to it if you would like, but I think this should be good for now. Okay, if the ID is not there, right? If the ID is not there, what we should do is we should do date dot now, and that way it will get some value always. Okay, so that being said, the last thing we'll check is if this dot edit mode that means if it is edit mode, if it is edit mode and this dot expense ID is not equal to null, that means we want a value. That's where we'll be able to update. Otherwise it doesn't make sense to update something which is not present, right? So this is the else part. This means add new expense. This part means edit an existing expense. Okay, so that's the logic we'll be following, that if it's a new one we will have in the else part, else it will go into an existing edit expense. So this is where we'll make the HTTP call for add. This is where we'll make the edit call. Okay, so far so good. I'll continue the making API call in the one more episode. That's where we'll do the add and edit API calls, but most of all our form is done. It looks like this, not very pretty, not very attractive. We'll do that piece also in the next part. Okay, we still have some more cleaning up. It's yeah, lot of work, lot of code. I hope you will appreciate my efforts, and please do hit that like button. We will continue in part 6. We'll make that API calls. Thank you so much.